People who have met their online friends, what made you instantly regret it? Story 1. She flew in town to be a bridesmaid in my wedding, and she decided to cheat on her husband with one of the groomsmen and blame me for that. Because it was my wedding, so that clearly makes it my fault she was unfaithful. Story 2. I invited him over to my house and he shat all over my toilet. Just to clarify, it was not in the toilet, it was on the seat, and a bit of it landed on the floor. Story 3. I used to play Counter-Strike 1.6 with one of the funniest and most lively guests I've ever met. He was a linchpin for half a dozen other guys in a friendship group that he welcomed me into. They lived about 200 miles south of me in the south of England. For several years we talked and played games together. He would brighten my day. I've never loved a friend like I loved him. Before I met him, I had no idea he was sick. Like, really sick. He had for which there is no cure and is a progressively debilitating disease. His form started by paralyzing his legs and working its way up to his arms and eventually his lungs. It wasn't until a few days before I had arranged for my first ever trip down there that he told me about it. It didn't faze me in the slightest. It made me want to go see him even more. I only saw him in real life twice before he died about a year later. I regret that I couldn't go to his funeral. It was too far away and I couldn't make it. Story 4. I actually worked with this lady at the time. She was good-looking and very flirtatious. Most importantly, we both played World of Warcraft at its prime. She ended up inviting me to join her server, and being a then horny 20-something, I, of course, joined up. We played for a time and had a good PvP group going, her regulars. Of course, she was still flirty with me in-game and I was back. All in group chat. Either way, we had some great times together slaying players in PvP. Summer comes, and it's a company BBQ. I find out she is bringing one of our PvP partners to the event. Cool. It was her husband, a cop. I've been virtually sexting her in-game in front of him for 3 months. Story 5. Met a girl I really liked on WoW, but she lived in another country. After a couple of vacations there, it turned into a relationship. Made the decision to move and start a new life there with her. After living there for 4 months, I slowly realized she was crazy as. Huge mood swings paired with a lot of aggression. Ended up getting stabbed in the side by her while asleep. Needless to say, after getting out of the hospital, I took the first plane back home. She's still in a psychiatric hospital. Story 6. I was 13 and had a 20-year-old pen pal in Hong Kong, both of us female. We met on Tumblr and emailed each other regularly. My parents were CC'd in all our correspondence. ABD, we basically just talked about our cultures. About a year of us talking went by, and she said that her university allowed her to study abroad in Europe for a semester, and she chose my country. Fun. I was excited. However, some time went by and our friendship kind of faded, to the point where I had forgotten she was even coming to my country. About 2 weeks before she was supposed to come, she emailed me that her student accommodation had to be cleaned out, so she couldn't access it on the night that she arrived. She needed a place to stay for 1 night. I asked my ma'am, and she agreed to pick her up from the airport with me, and she could stay with us for 1 night. I mean, we trusted this girl. I was very open about my friendship with her. We had pictures and everything. So 2 weeks later, we pick her up from the airport. And we didn't click. She kind of annoyed me, but it was late, and so we just went home. We get home and get her settled. We went up to my room. She gave me some presents and we chat a little bit. She says, "Thanks for letting me stay here this semester." Huh? Excuse me? This semester, I asked her. Like, what do you mean? You can stay here tonight. We can see each other during the weekends if you want to hang out, but you can't stay here. She goes quiet. We go to sleep. At this point, I just wanted her to go away. And I got what I wanted. The next morning, I wake up and she's gone. I don't even know how she got out because we lock the doors at night, but she just vanished. We have special locks that you need a key for to open, and the key was somewhere else in the house. Yes, I think this is a fire hazard. No, my ma'am can't be convinced it's unnecessary. Her suitcase was still there. I tried calling her, she didn't pick up. She eventually texted me, asking if my mother could drop off her suitcase at a train station 40 minutes away at a certain time. My mother brought the suitcase, and that was that. Never seen her or spoken to her again after that. Update. Now that I think about it, I have a theory about why this went down like it did. She most likely put down my address on her visa application as her place of residency during her stay and needed to stay in my house in case immigration was going to check if she was actually there. Also, for those wondering why she annoyed me, She treated my mother like a taxi driver and she shot down everything I said to her. She was rude to me until she gave me the presents, after which she directly started talking about staying with me the whole semester. She didn't want to talk to me after I said that I had told her she could stay for one night on that exact date. I told her we could discuss it with my parents in the morning. Her and my English were both great, and we had discussed specific dates. I didn't put this in the original comment because I didn't think this would blow up like it did. And I'm not Irish, haha. Story 7. Met up with a friend I met in WoW. I fell down steps. Instead of helping or asking if I'm okay, she laughed. Hard, like not breathing, on the floor. Gasping for air, seal clapping hard. We've been friends for like 8 years ever since that, and she still reminds me. Story 8. We went to a convention and he drunkenly told me and my boyfriend that he wished we weren't together so he could sleep with me. It was very awkward and he's lucky my boyfriend, now husband, is a patient man. Story 9. When I was 14, I had an online friend 2 states away who was 14. He and his mom took a trip to TLC me, and the first thing we did when we saw each other was run full speed at one another. Our heads bounced off each other and I chipped my tooth and broke his braces. I'm pretty sure his front tooth was also loose and had to go to the dentist to fix it. Lol. Edit. The video is down below if you want to see it. And I've gotten this question a few times. We don't talk much at all anymore, but I would consider us friends still. Story 10. Maybe not regret it, but it gave me years of depression. I met my best friend through Minecraft, never made friends in this, and I just wanted to play with someone. I have no idea why, so I complimented this girl's skin. We started talking, she was American, I'm Polish, and my English sucked. We moved to Skype, and at first I mostly typed, but later on she started teaching me English somehow by talking with me. She was 1 year older. We knew each other for almost a year, and I was staying up all night just to talk to her and her friends that she introduced to me. She was also depressed, so we talked with each other, and she was the first person that truly listened to me. We had plans of visiting each other. And then our mutual friend told me she committed suicide. 4 years passed by, and now at least I can talk about it and not cry. Still miss her very much though. Story 11. It was my friend Kate who befriended this girl, Jessica, who allowed us to come and stay with her when we traveled to the US. Jessica was rude to me instantly and kept my friend away from me. I'd go upstairs and she'd find a reason for them to go downstairs. She had Kate share her bedroom and she'd lock the door for hours, and so I'd just go off and do my own thing. We met her 2 odd friends, and they both ignored me. When it was time for Kate and I to move on to another state, Jessica insisted on coming with us. The lady we stayed with in another state, Robin, took no and called Jessica out on her strange behavior. Jessica proceeded to lock herself in a room and demanded Kate stay in there with her. They were in there all day, and eventually Kate came out and said to me that there's something wrong with Jessica and she's actually scared. We, Kate and I, had plans to stay with another online friend, Matt, in another state, and Jessica demanded we cancel because she doesn't like or trust Matt. We said no, this is our holiday and we've paid for flights, and Jessica said then she will come with us but we can't meet up with Matt. We said no, she cried. We left. Kate blocked her on everything. Kate's mother called us not long after saying Jessica contacted her crying, saying Kate is in danger and we abandoned Jessica, and she's so concerned for my friend's safety. Edit to add, I recall, she claimed to be concerned about Matt and basically wanted Kate's mom to tell us to stay with Jessica. It was actually incredibly scary. Kate found out later from another girl, Jane, they all knew each other from a forum, that Jessica had been telling everyone they were in love and had even slept together. I don't know how much of that is true, but I've known Kate for 20 years now and she's never identified as anything but straight. She denied it 100%. Jessica was just obsessed with her, and months later Kate heard Jessica was telling everyone she was saving money to come to our country to find Kate. She never did, thankfully. Other than the time spent with this girl, we had a great holiday and made some good friends. I still talk to Matt, he's great. Edit. Added fake names to make story a bit clearer as some people had trouble following. Story 12. He got freakishly obsessive and possessive. Met online through a fandom. After a few years, the fandom pretty much fell apart, but a handful of us stayed friends because we actually had a fair amount in common. D was very normal. The rest of the group seemed to love him. About 4 years after just being online mates, we met in person. It went fine. We interacted a lot on FB and Instagram. I hit a really busy period in my life but managed to squeeze in a Christmas get-together at my place for my little group of friends, including D. After that, my online activity decreased drastically due to being busy. And when I managed to get on FB, I noticed that most of the group were no longer friends with D. Weird, but whatever. I checked my messenger and saw message after message after message asking why I wasn't responding, what was I doing, could we arrange a meetup, etc. I explained I was super busy and it was also coming up to the anniversary of my mom's death. So just give me some time and we'll see about meeting up another time. He said, "Oh yeah, I forgot about the anniversary. You can have that day, but I expect a response after." That, I blocked him. So he sent email after email after email asking me, "What is your fucking problem? What the do you think you're doing?" etc. So I blocked his email too. After 3 very peaceful weeks, there was a knock on my door. It was D, and he had a 6-page letter detailing why we had to be friends. I shut the door, used an anonymous email thing to tell him if he contacted me again, showed up at my door, I would call the police. Went on FB and told everyone, including the 2 remaining mutual friends, about it all, and could the mutuals not share anything about me, my life, and actively discourage him from attempting to make contact. The friends who had long since unfriended him started messaging me that they stopped talking to him because of how creepy he was being in PMs about me, always asking if they knew what I was doing. Had I talked to them? Was I seeing anyone? Was I actually busy because he was convinced wasn't, etc. In return, I told them how he'd been trying to convince me to stop being friends with them because, according to him, they were all sorts of horrible things and that they were incredibly jealous and hated how close he and I were. I assumed he was just butthurt because they stopped talking to him, so was just making up a bunch of about these people who had always been perfectly nice to me. One incredibly weird occurrence just before this all happened was me telling a mutual on FB that I was heading to the aquarium in London with my daughter. Mutual friend was also in London that day with their daughter. And maybe we could grab a coffee, let the kids play in the park for a bit. I checked my messages later that evening, and D was incredibly upset because he'd waited at Farringdon Station exit for 2 hours so he could come to the aquarium too, and I didn't show up. We did not get off at that station, but one that was 2 stops after and closer to where we were going. I haven't heard a peep in over a year. He has apparently deleted his FB and Instagram and thankfully just disappeared. Story 13. Turns out my internet friend was a registered offender. He was a former high school teacher who was having with one of his 15-year-old students. I thought the guy seemed a bit odd, but when I saw the headline in the newspaper, a lot about his strange, reclusive lifestyle started making sense. We are no longer friends. Edit. Whoa, gold. Thank you, kind internet stranger. Story 14. My brother met a girl in person that he had known for 4 or 5 years online, during which time they had kind of had an online relationship. She had brought her friend with her to meet him, and while they were sitting around a table awkwardly making conversation, with my brother apparently quite shocked at how bad she looked in person compared to how she looked online, and having absolutely no interest in her other than as friends, the girl sent her friend a message saying, "OMG, get me out of here. He's looking at me like he wants to jump me." But she accidentally sent it to my brother. What ensued was likely incredibly painful to be part of. My brother showed her his phone and looked at her in disgust. Story 15. Made a RuneScape friend and chatted on and off for several years. He ended up being near-ish to my town, and we decided to get some food. Things were going great until a black man and white woman came in, and he whispered, completely seriously, "I hate interracial couples." Story 16. The lady was crazy. We met through an app that was advertised as a Meet Friends app and not a dating app. Well, turns out it was a dating app. However, she put in her bio that she was married with 2 kids. I put that I was in a long-term relationship and looking for friends. BTW, I'm a guy. She wasn't. So when we arranged a meetup, her husband and 2 kids were there as well as my girlfriend. Everything was going great. Hung out a few times and added each other on Facebook. Turns out she was super into the whole breastfeeding in public thing. Like, I get it. You go, girl. But she was super obsessed with it. 4 out of every 5 pics she posted to FB was her and her kid's mouth. She hot angry when you looked away when in public. Like, she wanted you to stare at her while she breastfed. Just got to the point that I was super uncomfortable with it and moved on. Story 17. I have weird story about a lesbian I met online and eventually IRL. For reference, I'm a bi girl. We started talking after I made a comment on a lesbian forum about being a single lesbian mom. I still didn't know if I was bi or a lesbian at the time. We started messaging a lot, hundreds of texts a day. This included sexting and trading nudes a lot too. But she was always obsessed with my daughter, like almost demanding pictures of her and updates on her. Eventually, we arranged to meet up. When we finally see each other in person, she looks shocked and asks where my daughter was. Being babysat by mom so we can have a date. I could tell this threw her off a bit. After our date, we start hooking up at my place. Even then, she was still asking about her. After this, can I meet her? Would you let me babysit? Do you think she'll start calling me mommy? I was like, chill, she's 1.5. This combined with her being obsessed with my daughter's stuff, including stealing a pacifier, a dirty onesie, going through the diaper pail. I decided this lady is crazy. She ended up stalking me for a while, but I was moving back in with my mom anyway, so I managed to escape. Story 18. Friend for 6 years flies over to Australia to hang with me for a month. Little did I know he was a bit taller than me. I was 5'10". He was, well, 6'7". I never knew he was this tall. He never talked about it. And when I was at the Brisbane airport waiting for him, I texted him stating, "I don't know where you are," to which he replied, "Look up." Towering over everyone is this blonde guy that has the arm span of the airport lobby. I cried, we laughed, and I regret bringing him over because my ceiling almost hits his head. Story 19. Not quite an instant regret, but there were two people I was meeting, Maisie and Maya, for the purpose of the story. We'd discussed meeting again, planned to have sleepovers, just generally have fun. The first day we met up went really well. We all had a good time. I thought it went brilliantly. Then a few weeks later, I found out they were carrying out all the plans, without me. They still have sleepovers to this day when Maya is back from uni, and I'm just left out. I don't speak to either of them anymore. It hurt, lol. Edit. For more context to make it worse, I'd met Maisie a few times before and it was fine. This all happened after I met Maya at the same time. A few months down the line, Maya confessed she had a crush on me. Don't know if that played into it, but story 20. Never actually met Heim but played Apex with a dude pretty regularly, almost every day. We finally exchanged info, and then he used to call me repeatedly in depressed fits and about how girls don't like him. It sucks because I wanted to help, but once it hit 36 calls in one day, I had to block or edit. Thanks for the silver. Story 21. Not instant regret, but did make me realize things could have gone badly if this friend hadn't been a good human. I used to play Halo 2 with a guy, Molested Spartan. I always thought the name was hilarious, and he said it was what Xbox randomly assigned him when he let XBL choose his username. That has nothing to do with how the event went, just his name in case he's on Reddit lol. We were playing Halo one day and I made some off-the-wall comment about how bad traffic was due to them redoing one of our local roads, and he said his town was redoing a lot of roads too. I think I had a friend over or coming over and I forgot to mute my mic and said the road he lived on, asking when he had to leave, come over. Again, this was 15 years ago, a little fuzzy. Anyways, Molested Spartan was like, "Holy, do you live in XYZ?" And I told him, yeah. Turns out he lived like 5 miles away from me on the other side of town. We met up. I was about 11 or 12 at the time. He was like 17, and he went and bought me a burger and milkshake while we chatted. Pretty cool dude from what I remember, but when I got home I thought about how different that could have been if he wasn't just some high schooler trying to make a kid's night with a burger and shake. Edit. Holy. Thanks for my first gold, you giraffe 70. Story 22. When I was in high school, I met a guy from a different high school in a local chat room. We hit it off, and after a few days, we agreed to meet up at the store I worked at once I finished work. Well, I guess he showed up a little early with a friend and came through my check stand. I thought it was him. We'd swapped photos. But I was really shy and didn't want to be wrong. I waited for him to introduce himself, but he never did, and he and his friend paid for whatever they had and left without conversation. I was still hopeful that wasn't the guy, so I waited up for him for an hour after my shift. Of course, he never showed, because that absolutely was the guy. He must have been disappointed when he met me in the checkout line, and instead of being a decent person and saying he wasn't interested, he just ghosted me. If I could go back in time, I definitely would have said something to him at the check stand. That's my one regret. Story 23. I met a friend on here and we planned to travel together. We rendezvous at a city to start hitchhiking. I instantly regretted it because he seemed like he had no clue of what was happening, and that made everything a bit annoying. That feeling lasted 2 days, and now I miss him very much and hope we could see each other again soon. Story 24. Met her after gaming with her for like 1.5 years. My parents allowed me to have her visit me for a weekend. Unbelievably beautiful girl, had a lot of deep talks on the phone. We're frequently flirting quite hard and stuff. She kind of was my first love interest. We went out for a drink with a few friends of mine. Started hitting on my best friend the second she saw him. Didn't even pay attention to me the whole evening, and the first thing she said the next morning was, "Let's go to his place." That fucking hurt. Edit. Alright, a few things. 1. That was 10 years ago, give or take. I've made similar experiences over and over until I learned how to be more precise and direct about my feelings, especially towards love interests. Today, I'm a self-confident guy in his mid-20s that is very secure around people, so I guess things worked out for me. 2. I stopped contacting her after that, while my best friend actually stayed close for quite some years, proceeding to have some strange kind of friends with benefits, love affair type situation going on with her. I don't blame him. She was a gorgeous girl, even though it bothered me first. We are best friends still, while she has vanished into nothingness at some point. 3. As many refer to my best friend as a bad friend for not respecting my interest in said girl. He didn't flirt with her that evening at all. It was one-sided, really. Everything that happened between the two of them was afterwards, after I quit contacting her. He asked me if I was okay with him keeping contact, and I was, since my interest had poofed out of existence at this very evening. Story 25. Welp, I'm meeting an online friend of 6 years in a few days. From this thread, I can now safely assume he's a dying racist stalker who wants to be more than friends. Thanks, Reddit. Story 26. The amount of desperation that girl had. Holy. First issue was she used a picture of herself when she was younger and thinner. She used to be around 120 pounds, I believe she told me. She was easily over 300 pounds and couldn't walk for long. Eventually, she took out a cane. I didn't know how to react to a 21-year-old using a cane. Someone that injured? Sure. Someone that spent 90% of their time watching YouTube and reading animes. Not fine. We walked, sat, talked for a bit. She warned me she has anger issues and might snap at me at any random time. She would constantly look at her phone and sigh loudly. We met up basically on a date to see a movie. When watching the movie, she would constantly burp, and during every romantic scene. She would cheer herself on every time too, in the fucking theater, after the date was over. I didn't want to see her again, but apparently I left a good impression. She would call me, constantly, every night, usually crying about how much she hates where she lives, how much she hates why she can't leave, etc., etc. She wanted a relationship to rescue her from there. Life would be better if she had a boyfriend and just did her own thing. The only jobs she had were at fast food places. Those didn't last long. Each one 2-3 months at most. She constantly smelled like fish. She dropped out of college because, in her words, I couldn't stand the stuck-up people there. They really made it unbearable. Also, she does not like studying. After a while, she stopped contacting me. I believe that she had taken the hint and backed off. In reality, she went to another guy who is basically the literal definition of 4chan soy boy, though much worse. He can barely keep down a job, he can barely maintain himself, he drinks himself silly, and she is just happy to be away from her family. She started contacting me again, begging me to save her from him, and I'm like, I have a girlfriend now. Bye. She left a 16-page Facebook rant. Haven't heard from her since. Story 27. We met over a Dead by Daylight game. He was really charming, funny, and nice. Then he fell in love with one girl of our gaming group, and they started a long-distance relationship. He even flew in to meet her in person. Turns out he is an abusive, narcissistic, who constantly belittled my friend. He gaslighted her and loved to play psycho games with our group. We stopped playing with him after a few weeks because he was so toxic to our group. Sadly, my friend struggled at that time and had difficulties to break up with him. Took her several weeks to finally do it. She is so much better now. Fuck you, Bull. Edit. Some corrections. Edit 2. Another story about Bull. He then lived with his father in a small apartment. And because he is a sloppy disgusting, and his father also, they only had like 3 underpants. And yes, I said they, because they shared them. I couldn't believe it. Or the time he declared he wants to stop smoking weed because it makes him stupid. Typical I am so smart. Boy was dumb as. Story 28. Not me personally, but somebody my friend went to school with was murdered after meeting his online friend. Seriously fucked up. Listen to how chillingly emotionless and roptic his 999 call is. Story 29. I met a friend on here, AskReddit, spoke for a few months online, and then flew 2,000 miles to meet them. Unfortunately for our bank accounts, we fell madly in love, and now engaged to married, meaning we're spending thousands on flights and, eventually, a visa application. He's the most expensive date I've ever had, but he's worth every penny. Story 30. Only 1 year I regret. The host decided to invite double what we had last year. 14 socially inept nerds in one house for a week. I had 6 panic attacks. Story 31. Was at a really bad place, got bullied in school, was kinda chubby, and had some social anxiety. Went to LAN party with some friends I met over playing WoW. At the time I regretted it because they actually were good for me and gave me happiness. It ruined my then current plans for taking my life. Today I love them all more than life. Edit. Thanks for all the lovely comments. I hope you all have a wondrous day. 3. Story 32. I used to draw a lot on IX and generally browse 4chan. I was going through a lot of depression and I felt alienated from friends and family, as well as the death of a long relationship. Somehow just talking to other people about the most mundane stuff felt so amazing. I was in a few Skype groups, we would chat about life, play online games and stuff. One couple was nice and the guy was trying to quit smoking. Another guy just got a promotion at work. You know, real people with life. They all were far away. Until I get this email. I was going to delete it because it seemed weird, but I read it. It was a case of mistaken identity. He thought I was this person who also did modeling, cosplay or something because of my email name. I corresponded and corrected them, but we just kept talking. He also loved paranormal stuff, was into films and writing too, and close by. After a month or so of daily talks and texts, we wanted to hang out. Between all this, I was moving out and in a bad spot emotionally, but he was very nice and talked me through anxious parts. I met him and sparks flew. No, actually, I couldn't look him in the eyes and got sweaty because I realized how cute he was and how much I felt like an idiot. We did kiss, and as cliché as it sounds, it felt like when Dorothy entered Oz. My life had color again. Anyway, it ended well because we're getting married this year. Story 33. The person is clingy as and pisses me off almost all the time. He always gets infuriated by me for not saving him in a game. And when I call him out on this bullshit, like when it's not my fault, he tells me to calm down and stop getting angry. Honestly, just taking a long 3-month break from him, because it can be so exhausting to be around him. And I'm also not the only one who thinks so too. A lot of his friends and people he hangs out with also say exactly what I've said here. Story 34. Online. Friendship turned into online relationship. Online relationship turned into meeting IRL. Meeting IRL led into not working relationship. Not working relationship turned into breaking up and not talking to each other anymore. Story 35. So this one weirdly changed my life. So for context, I live in Ireland, and my friend lived in Scotland. I met this guy on Xbox when I was like 14, and he's 16 back in 2012. Got to know each other super well and talked every day and played Halo and Mass Effect 3 together. We did this for 3 years, and I would have considered him one of my best friends at the time. But I'd never met him. I knew all about his life, I'd spoken to some his family before. So I was known by some of his IRL friends too. In year 4, his 360 died, so then he got an Xbox One and I got a PS4. Because of consoles, we stopped talking a lot. We would catch up every now and then on Facebook and whatnot. This all changed in 2017 when he got engaged to a girl I remember him dating when we were talking. A few weeks later, I start getting messages about the wedding. He contacted me to be one of his groomsmen. Now 16-year-old me made a promise that I'd go to his wedding. So I said, yeah, sure, of course. I had just fucked myself. He later told me the wedding was in the US, which means I had to start saving to go. Let's skip to 2018. I fly out to the US for the wedding, and I get to the hotel everyone is staying at. I text the groom and ask where everyone is. They are out for food. So I go get a cab and follow out to them. I walk into the restaurant. He very quickly spotted me and ran over, called out my old gamer tag, and hugged me. I didn't realize how small he was. I'm only 6'1". I expected him to be taller. But after that night, I found out that without something to focus on, video games, He could actually be a little bit annoying, and I had just committed to being stuck in a mansion for 4 days after this. At the time, I was in a 2-year-long relationship with someone who wasn't making me happy. At the wedding, I met one of the groom women. There were 2 girls and 3 guys. And instantly we clicked. We both also slagged the groom, so kind of bonded on that. We just got on super well, and we decided to hang out the whole wedding. She was also in a relationship. One of the nights we kissed, and after that I knew it was over with my now ex. After the wedding, and me and her were flying out on the same day, and we were in the same terminal. We had a nice goodbye. I got home and broke it off with my ex. That night, the girl from the wedding got dumped. We saw each other on off for a month or 2, and after that we started to get serious. I'm still with her, and it's the happiest I've ever been with someone. Story 36. Met my best friend at the time on League of Legends. After talking every day for 3 years, I ended up moving to a state much closer to him, so we decided to finally meet. We talked before about all the things we'd do together and how awesome it would be. I loved him so much. He was there for me through so much and was a wonderful friend. He had a new girlfriend at the time of our meetup, and he brought her along with him. I had no problem with this because I'd love to meet the woman who makes him happy. It was abundantly clear from the get-go that she wasn't a real big fan of me. I did my best to be kind and still had tons of fun. I didn't hear from my friend much after that. A mutual good friend of ours messaged me, and when I asked about my best friend, they said that his girlfriend was telling people that I was basically an awful person for whatever reason. 3 years later, and he is engaged to this woman, and I'm happy for him, but I haven't spoken to him in those 3 years. I still miss him every day, and I wish I could be there for him on his wedding day. Story 37. I had a group of online friends for a bit, and I am really close with my older brother, like best buds. And one day, while we were playing League, I asked my brother to join. After a while, I guess because my brother was better at the game than me, they stopped inviting me to any games, so I eventually was separated from the group. One of them came to my state for an event and asked my brother if he wanted to go. He said yeah, and then asked me. I was a bit hesitant, but after my brother insisted, I went. I did have fun, but they were moments that made me remember that I am really not in that group anymore. Story 38. I didn't. She's my best friend even though we live 1,000 miles apart, but right now, I'm sitting on her swing waiting for her to wake up and I couldn't be happier. Edit. Per request, Emma answers some questions. Yes, I was invited. It's my 3rd day here of 5. And I am a guy. We've known each other for 2 years and this is my first visit up here. She's 19, I'm 18. Anything else you want to just ask, I guess?